Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Think about that phrase. Let's read it one more time. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. In every crowd, you could find someone that may be having marriage problems, someone who's grieving the loss of someone they love, someone who's been abused or is struggling with addiction, someone who is hurting physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. Some of those people are looking for love. Some of them are looking for money. Some of them are looking for new opportunities. Some are looking for answers, some for fulfillment. But what they're looking for can only be found in Jesus. So that brings us to our Bible story today. And the title of my message is I Need Help. I need help. The story's in Mark chapter 5. I'm not going to read the whole text because it's rather long this morning. But we know the story. Jairus, ruler of the synagogue, has come and fallen at Jesus' feet, earnestly begging Jesus to come and heal his daughter who is dying. He pleads with Jesus to just come and lay his hands on her that she might be made well and live. He puts his dignity and pride aside. He doesn't care about his position. His daughter is dying, and all he can do is fall at the feet of Jesus and beg him to come and heal her. Without argument or question, Jesus goes with Jairus. And a great crowd follows. And they throng Jesus, so the King James says. They press him. It's like being in any kind of mob trying to get somewhere. And they push you together. And you can't move anywhere except where the mob is going. Headed for Jairus' house. But in the midst of all of that, somehow this little, weak, frail lady makes her way to Jesus. She's been sick for 12 years. And she thought, if I could just reach the hem of his garment, I'll be made well. And she reaches out and she touches Jesus. Now, according to the law of Moses, she has been unclean for the past 12 years. She suffered much at the hands of the doctors and spent all that she had, and she'd only gotten worse instead of better. She's out of money. She suffered. People are avoiding her because she's unclean. She's in hopeless despair. No one can help her. No one can fix her condition. Now we have two very different people that have are both have some things in common. They're both suffering tragedy, and they're both in deep need of help, and they turn to Jesus for that help. No family is immune to emergencies. We prefer there be no surprises in life, but tragedies come, don't they? And many times people will turn to Jesus. So let's look at these two people this morning and see what they have in common and what we can learn from their stories. First of all, we have two very desperate people. The first one being Jairus. Jairus is a ruler of the synagogue. That means that he's sort of chairman of the board over the synagogue. He is the person that's responsible for all of the services and activities that take place inside the synagogue. Stating those facts, he's probably a Pharisee. I think that's a safe assumption. And realize by this point in Jesus' ministry, the Pharisees want Jesus out of the way. They're trying to figure out how are they going to get Jesus out of the picture. But tragedy causes you to rethink things. This ruler of the synagogue, this prestigious man in Capernaum, falls at the feet of Jesus begging, "Come to my house, touch my daughter, that she might be made well and live." The urgency of the situation caused him to seek for help. And in the moment of need, he fell at the feet of Jesus. But also in this crowd is this unnamed woman. What we know about her is that she'd had an issue of blood for 12 years. We know that she has spent everything she had trying to find a cure. Now, this problem may have been more common than we realize. Edersheim, in his book about the life of Christ, says this: on one leaf of the Talmud, not less than 11 different remedies are proposed, of which only 6 could possibly be regarded as astringents or tonics, while the rest are merely outcomes of superstition, such as the ashes of an ostrich egg carried in the summer in linen and in the winter on a cotton rag, or barley corn found in the dung of a white female donkey. That's just 2 of the superstitious type of cures. None of those things worked. She had spent everything. She had nothing. Now, according to the law of Moses in Leviticus chapter 15, as well as Jewish customs, heavy restrictions were placed upon her. She would have been excluded from temple worship, public fraternizing. Anyone she would have touched would have become unclean. So think about, what does that do to family relationships? What does that do with friendships of anyone? She's in a situation same as a leper. She can't go home. She can't go to the temple. She can't go to the synagogue. She can't be near people. She is unclean and has been that way for 12 years. Imagine how weak she must be. Imagine how frail she must be. In her desperation, she turns to Jesus. Think about it. Desperate people. I looked up the definition of desperate just to think about what it means. Having lost hope. Giving no ground for hope. Moved by despair or utter loss of hope. Involving or employing extreme measures in an attempt to escape defeat and frustration. Suffering extreme need or anxiety, involving extreme danger or possible disaster. Now, thinking about those definitions, certainly Jairus is in that position. This woman is in that position. they're going to the extreme measures. Jairus could have lost his position as ruler of the synagogue by coming and kneeling in front of Jesus. He didn't care. His daughter was dying and he needed help, and there was only one that could help, and that was Jesus. This woman, she's been sick for 12 years. How in the world she ever pressed through that crowd just to touch the hem of Jesus' garment? I don't know, but she did it because she was desperate. And she knew Jesus was the only one that could help. How many people in our world are desperate? How many people are suffering extreme measures and have no grounds for hope? And I don't know what the answer is to that question, but I think it's way more than we know about. There are a lot of people that live their lives in isolation, that have no hope. Why do you think so many people commit suicide? They can't find hope. There are a lot of people out there that are desperate and need hope. But aren't we all sort of like the unnamed woman? We try to fix issues on our own, and we spend everything we have chasing after all these different things. We talk to people, we spend money until we're broke, and maybe we even try to medicate ourselves and numb the pain, but nothing works, and we end up miserable. So they're both desperate. But then these two people are two people with some kind of faith. Some kind of faith. The story says, if you're reading and looking in the text, it says she had heard about Jesus. She had heard about Jesus. Now, we know what Romans 10:17 says. So faith comes from hearing, hearing through the word of Christ. We know faith comes by hearing. The question is, what had this woman heard? Had she heard Jesus? I don't know. If she's a social outcast, she couldn't have got very close to Jesus. If she's unclean, she couldn't get close to anyone, for fear that she might touch somebody and then make them unclean. So she's heard about Jesus. What has she heard? Has she heard other people explaining things about Jesus? I don't know what exactly she heard. But she heard enough to come up with this logic. If I only touch the hem of his garment, I can be made well. Now, where did Jesus teach that? Nowhere. Jesus didn't teach that. So that's why I'm saying, what was it that she had heard? But I want you to think about her faith for a moment. Her faith is a superstitious faith. All right? Now remember what the Talmud said? You know, you carry the ashes of an ostrich egg in a linen cloth, and that'll make you well. Isn't that superstition? So the Talmud had a number of superstitions in it. She had a superstitious faith. She had tried all of those things that the Talmud has said, and it didn't work. All right? So she wanted to touch the hem of his garment. Now, the garment we're talking about is a prayer shawl. And if you look in this picture, and if you look carefully, at the bottom of the prayer shawl, you can see tassels. All right? Now, these tassels were tied in a series of knots. And they used these tassels when they prayed, much like Catholics use rosary beads to pray. And so as they prayed, they would count the knots in their prayers. The superstition among all Jewish people was that any powerful rabbi left behind some kind of something in those tassels that left his power in those tassels. So she, in her superstition, said, if I can only touch the hem, if I can only touch those tassels, I'll be made well. Because that's where the power's at. Is that where the power was? No. But that's her superstition. That's what she believes. All right. So, her faith is superstitious. But I want you to notice something else about her faith. It's very selfish. All right? Alexander McLaren, in his commentary on Mark, says this. She wanted help, but she did not care about the healer. She thought much of the blessing in itself, little or nothing of the blessing as a sign of his love. She would have been quite contented to have had nothing more to do with Christ if she could have only gone away cured. She felt but little glow of gratitude to him, whom she thought of as an unconscious of the good which she had stolen from him. Think about that. Selfishness. I just touch the hem of his garment. I can draw back in this crowd. Nobody will ever know. How many people have that kind of faith? They want all of the blessings, but they don't want to recognize the healer. They don't want to recognize the one that can make our life whole. Her faith, superstitious and selfish. Now, Jairus comes begging for help. His daughter's at death's door. Please come and lay your hands on her that she might be healed, may be made whole. Now, let's go back through this. He's the ruler of the synagogue in Capernaum. That's the same synagogue that the centurion that we talked about last week had built. Remember that centurion had a servant that was sick, and all he said to Jesus was, just say the word and my servant will be healed. You don't come to my house. Just say the word. Jairus, wouldn't he have known about that situation? He should have known. And he comes to Jesus, just come to my house and lay your hands on my daughter that she might be made whole. Is there a sense of doubt in Jairus? Is there some sense that Jesus can't just say the word and it will happen, that he really needs to drag Jesus all the way to his house, which wasn't far in Capernaum, it wasn't that big of a town, but still, I mean, Jesus had been teaching and Jesus was busy with other things. Why not be like the centurion? Why not have that faith that Jesus said, I've not found such great faith in all of Israel? Certainly Jairus is not demonstrating that kind of faith. He's saying, you got to come. And you got to touch my daughter. Well, at least in fairness to Jairus, he was desperate. And it was his only child. And she was about to die. But now think. He's got Jesus coming, and the crowd is following and pressing all up against Jesus. And then there's that interruption. That woman makes her way through the crowd to Jesus and touches the hem of his garment. And as she's about to withdraw back into the crowd, Jesus stops. He turns around and he says, "Who touched me?" I just love the response of the disciples. "Jesus, are you nuts? Look at this crowd. And why are you saying, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus knew who touched him. I think when he said, "Who touched me?" he had already made eye contact with her. All right. But you got to stop and you got to deal with that. Can you imagine what Jairus is feeling? Come on, Jesus. We got to hurry. We don't have time for this, Jesus. Come on, we got to go. We got to go. But Jesus says, "No, wait a minute. This woman needs help. And I'm going to help her." So he took the time to help her. And while he's doing that, the news comes. The girl is dead. Don't bother to teach her anymore. That sounds so cold. The girl is dead. Don't bother to teach her anymore. Can you imagine the inner feelings of Jairus? All the emotions that must be going on inside of him. And the thoughts. Can you hear them? "Oh, Jesus, if you didn't just have stopped and it healed this woman, you could have saved my daughter." Can you hear that? That inner thought inside of him? Does Jesus know what he's thinking? Yeah. Yeah, because Jesus just looks at him and says, "Don't worry about it. Just trust me. I got this. We're going to be okay." And he sends the crowd away. Only kept Peter, James, John. So the three of them, Jesus and Jairus, make his way back to Jairus' house. Our faith. How often are we like those two people? How often do we want something, but we want to go unnoticed? I think there are way more people that call themselves Christians that fall in that category today. They want something from Jesus. They know they need Jesus, but they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be noticed. They don't want any part of anything. We want the blessing, but we don't want to show gratitude. You know? Think about it. We're all in that category. We believe, but there's always that little bit of doubt too. You know, we use that word if. If Jesus would just hear my prayer. If Jesus would just answer my prayer. The Bible says when we pray, we're supposed to pray with faith. We're supposed to pray believing and not doubting. Why do we use the word if? Why? But we do. We all do it. Think about the tragic event of 9/11. We all remember that. You remember where you were the day that happened? I remember it just like it's yesterday. I mean, that was a tragic thing. After that happened, how many churches were packed to the brim? For how long? 3-4 months? And then it was all over again? When we face tragedies, we turn to Jesus for help, but how quickly we forget. That's the kind of faith we've got. But there's something else these two have in common. They had their desperation. They had a kind of faith, all right? Not a perfect faith. They had a kind of faith. There's something else they have in common. There's salvation for both. Salvation comes for both. Jairus' request. Let's look at it right here. Jairus' request is, my little daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live. All right? That's his request. Is this a strange request? I mean, think about it. If she were healed, wouldn't she live? If she were healed, wouldn't she live? So why does he ask that she be healed and live? Is he asking more than what we see at first glance? Well, think about the unnamed woman. She touches Jesus. Jesus stops. Who touched me? All right? But Jesus called the woman out. There's some reasons why he calls this woman out. He had to let her know that what she had done had not gone unnoticed. All right? He knew. He felt the power when it left him to heal her. And when you do something, for someone, it takes some power out of you, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. There's some effort we have to put into things when we're doing something to help other people. Jesus experienced that. He's helping this woman, but it's taking something out of him to heal this woman. All right? He needed to get her full confession because he needed to develop her faith. I mean, think about it. We already looked at it. It was a superstitious faith. It was a selfish faith. He needs to bring that faith. He took the little bit of faith she had. He needs to bring it on all the way. And so she needs to make a public confession of Jesus and what Jesus has done for her to remove her problem, but also to remove her public stigma. She's been unclean for 12 years. Not anymore. But how's everyone going to know that unless Jesus calls her out and says, you're healed? Let's look at what Jesus said to her. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be cured of your diseases. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be cured. He called her daughter. The only person in the Bible Jesus ever referred to as daughter. This unclean woman who's been isolated for 12 years, who was so frail and so weak from all of the hemorrhaging that she had done. He called her daughter. Why? Restoring relationships. Helping this woman be accepted back into the community. Being accepted again by her family. Being accepted again by the synagogue. Being able to go worship in the temple. Be able to meet with her friends down by the well when they went to draw water in the morning. Oh, think about all of these relationships that are stored. And he says it all in that one word, daughter. That's important for us to remember. Okay. The daughter was raised from the dead. Now wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So there's one more connection between these two women. Carla mentioned it in the Sunday school hour. We didn't touch it too much in the Sunday school hour, but let's hit it now. 12. The number 12. Now, numerology is important to the Jewish people. So let's think about it for a minute. 3 represents God. 4 represents humans. All right? Now, 3 times 4 is 12. So what in the world does all of that mean? It means simply this. God is about to do something among humans. Did God do something among humans? Jesus raised a 12-year-old girl that was dead, and Jesus healed a woman that had been sick for 12 years. God was doing something among humans, right? That's the importance of the number 12. But there's something else that connects them. Let's go back here. And let's look. The word sozo, the Greek word sozo. Jesus said, get well, sozo. King James says, be healed, sozo. The American Standard says, be made whole, sozo. All right? That's the way it translates to sozo. So you got get well, be healed, made whole. All his definitions of sozo can also be translated be saved. Be saved. Now let's think about this. All right, so this is Jairus' daughter. I want you to make her whole so she can live. The word live that's used there means to be made alive, quick. All right, quick, alive. Not dead, but alive. You're made alive after you're made whole. All right? So she's made whole, and then she's made alive. Those are two separate things. Now, let's go to the other one. What Jesus says to the woman. Your faith has made you well, or King James says whole, that's sozo, and be cured or made whole of your diseases, and that's a different word. So be made whole, sozo. Be made whole, be healed, be cured, be saved. Now, what were these two saved from? They're saved from their uncleanness, because both of them are unclean. The little girl's unclean because she died. The woman's unclean because she had the issue of blood. They're both unclean. All right? So God was doing something more than just a healing. He was making them whole. Remember, the purity of Jesus is far greater than any uncleanness. The grace of Jesus is far greater than any evil that exists. He made them whole. Think about the woman's life. Right? She can go back to the synagogue. She can go home to her family. She can meet the other women at the well in the morning when they go to draw the water. She can do all of those things she has not been able to do for 12 years. See, there's more than just the healing that took place there. There is some salvation that brings her back into the community. Like the little girl, she's dead. Jesus made her whole. He did more than raise her from the dead. He restored her position in the family. And she got up and she ate. Why does the world of the Bible include that fact? She got up and she ate. Well, several reasons that's important. Number one, if she's eating, she's not dead. Right? That's the most obvious thing. But think about all the family relationships that revolve around eating. You're going to have a big celebration? What are you going to do? You're going to eat, right? And that's what happens here. They're celebrating her return to the family. They're eating. All right? So Jesus restored all of these relationships that they had lost. Jesus made them whole. And then He made them alive. You see, we gotta understand all that because there's two things that's involved here. There's blood and there's death. Now, what other story in the Bible do you find blood and death connected? On the cross, right? It's on the cross. What did Jesus do on the cross? Number one, He made us whole. Right? We're not trapped by the curse anymore. This poor woman, they've been cursed for 12 years. We're not trapped by the curse anymore. Jesus defeated sin. And He defeated death. We don't have to worry about death anymore. All right? He defeated sin and death. All right? But then, when we come to Jesus, He makes us alive. John 10:10, Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full, or have it abundantly. See, there's more to salvation than just saving us from our spiritual diseases. Jesus is concerned about a person physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. He's concerned about the whole person. And He makes the person whole and then makes them alive. That's what this story is about for us, what Jesus does for us. Okay? So think about the relationship between desperation and faith. Think about that relationship, because certainly that's here in this story. Desperation helps bring us to faith, doesn't it? But then let's think about this. What do these two stories teach that's important for me to apply in my life? And the answer simply is this: I need Jesus. He's the only one that can help. I need to humble myself. I need to beg for His mercy, beg for His grace, listen to His teachings, obey His commands, that I can be made whole and then made alive. So what about it today? Where are you in your relationship to Jesus? Is there a decision you need to make for Jesus today? If so, come while we stand and we're going to sing, Your Grace is Enough.